Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is covering section 1.9, which is exponents and order of operations. So here it says an exponent is shorthand notation for repeated multiplication. If you notice, we're multiplying the number 3 by itself 5 times. So 3 is referred to as the base, and my number 5 is what we call the exponents. So for these first couple of problems here, what we're going to do is we're going to write using exponents. So the first thing I notice is I'm multiplying the number 3. I'm multiplying the number 3 4 times. So my answer would be 3 to the 4th. My second problem, I'm doing 5 times 5. So that would be 5 to the 2nd power. If you notice my third problem, I have two different base numbers. I have the numbers 2 and I have the number 5. Since I'm multiplying the number 2 twice, it's going to be 2 squared times, since I'm multiplying the number 5 3 times, 5 to the 3rd. And for my last part here, I just have the number 3. So 3 is only written one time, so my answer would be 3 to the 1st. For the next part that I have here, we're going to evaluate. To evaluate means we want to find the actual value. Okay, so for this first one, 3 squared. 3 squared means 3 times 3. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. For 5 to the 3rd, that means 5 times 5 times 5. Well, 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5, if you think about how much money would you have if you had 5 quarters? 125. 2 to the 4th, again 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. This 2 times that 2 is also 4, and 4 times 4 gives me 16. Finally, 1 to the 7th means I'm multiplying 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. Well, 1 times 1 is still 1, times 1 is still 1, times 1 is still 1. And so my answer here would just be 1. Okay, the next part of 1.9 is order of operations. And order of operations says perform all operations within parentheses, brackets, or other grouping symbols such as fraction bars starting with the innermost set. Number 2, we're going to evaluate any expressions that have exponents. Number 3, we're going to multiply or we're going to divide from order from left to right. The left to right part is very important. Same thing with adding or subtracting. We're going to add or we're going to subtract as we go in order from left to right. So if we look at the first problem here, it says to simplify 24 plus 6 times 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my step number 1. I do not have any parentheses, brackets, or other grouping symbols. So I know I'm good with number 1. I'm then going to go to number 2. Number 2 says, do I have any exponents? I do not, so I don't need to worry about number 2. Number 3, do I have any multiplication or division? Yes, we do. We need to multiply those two numbers there. So now I'll have 24 plus 6 times 3 is, 18. Now I can just add my numbers together. 24 plus 18 is 42. I will now go to the next problem, see if we can do it the same way. So I have 14 divided by 7 times 2 plus 3. Again, I'm going to go in order from left to right. Do I have any parentheses? No, I do not. I don't need to worry about that. Nor do I have any exponents. Do I have any multiplication or division? I actually have both. The question is, which one do I do first? Well, according to my order of operations, I need to go in order from left to right. The first thing that I see is 14 divided by 7. Well, 14 divided by 7 is 2 times 2 plus 3. I'm going to continue going in order from left to right. I have 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 3. Now I have adding, so finally 4 plus 3 is 7. My next problem here, 32 plus 8 divided by 2. Again, if you notice, I do not have any parentheses. I do not have any exponents. I do have division, 8 divided by 2. So I'm going to have 32 plus 8 divided by 2 is 4. Finally, I can add. That gives me 36. I'm going to continue to scroll down to the next part here. Okay, so here we have a little bit more complex problems. I do have exponents, I do have parentheses. Again, if you go back and you look up here at the top, the first thing I have to do is take care of anything that has grouping symbols, parentheses, or brackets. So when I look at my problem here, I have these parentheses. This is what I need to do first. So I'm going to go ahead and write out my entire problem, 2 to the 4th times 4 minus 25 divided by 5 is just 5. I do have these exponents, so I have 2 to the 4th. So 2 to the 4th, remember, means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. That gives me 16 times 4 minus 5. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the next part. I have multiplication. 16 times 4 is 64. Finally, 64 minus 5 gives me 59. There's my answer. Okay, so let's take a look at the next problem that I have here. If you notice this problem here, I do not have any parentheses, but I do have exponents. The one thing I want to mention is when I'm doing a problem like this, I'm going to do one step at a time. So 5 squared means 5 times 5, that's 25, times 2 minus 10. Okay, now my next step, do I have any multiplication and division? I actually have both. I need to do in the order which they appear from left to right. 9 divided by 3 is 3, plus 25 times 2 minus 10. If you notice from one step to the next, I'm only doing one thing. I still have to do my multiplication. 25 times 2. So 3 plus 50 minus 10. I'm going to do my adding now. 3 plus 50 is 53. Minus 10 is 43. For my next part here, if you notice, I have both parentheses and fraction bars. So I'm going to do what's on the inside of the parentheses first. Even though I don't see it here, the operation that's understood there is, it's supposed to be multiplication. Let me get that part back, Right here, that's multiplication. Okay, so I'm going to do what's on the inside of the parentheses first. 7. 9 minus 6 is 3, plus 3. Here's my fraction bar, 3 squared minus 3. In doing a problem like this, what we do is we take care of the top first and we come back and do the bottom. So remember, the operation here is multiplication. So 7 times 3 is 21, plus 3. That leaves me with 24. Now we can come back and do the bottom. 3 squared means 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Minus 3. Well, 9 minus 3 is 6. And then finally, 24 divided by 6 leaves me with 4. Okay, continuing with the next problem that we have here. We have, not only do we have parentheses, but we also have brackets. In doing a problem like this, the order of operation says we need to work from the innermost set out. So I'm going to go ahead and leave my 18 divided by 6 alone. I'm going to work with my 3 plus 5. So 3 plus 5 is 8 squared times 2. Okay. Now, I can go ahead and start dealing with both my parentheses and my brackets. 18 divided by 6 is 3. Plus, when I get to this part, I need to ask myself, should I do 8 squared first, or should I do 8 times 2 first? Well, remember, before we do multiplication, we have to deal with exponents. 8 squared is 64, plus 2. Times 2, I'm sorry, my mistake. Times 2. So now, I'm going to go ahead and continue. 3 plus 64 times 2 is 128. Finally, I can just add 3 plus 128, 131. And there's my answer. Okay, and so for the next part here, it says 8 divided by 0 plus 37. 8 divided by 0 is something we call undefined. We can never divide by 0. If you think about that for a minute, if I asked you what would say 8 divided by 2, our answer would be 4. And our reasoning would be, well, 2 times 4 is going to give me 8. If I asked what's 8 divided by 0, no matter what number I put here, 0 times this number would never ever give me 8. And that's why we say it's undefined. The fact that this part is undefined means that the rest of it is undefined too, because I can't add 37 to 8. Or to undefined, excuse me. All right, the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is asking me what number times itself gives me 9. Well, that would be 3. What number times itself would give me 144? That would give me 12. The last problem that I have here says find the area and the perimeter. So I have a square, and each of the sides are 7 meters. That means that this side is also 7, and this side is also 7, and that side is also 7. So for the first part, if I wanted to find the perimeter just is asking me what's the distance all the way around. So I would take 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus another 7. Well, that would give me 14. That would give me another 14. And if I add them together, that's going to give me 28. To find the area, I'm going to take the length, which is 7, times the width, which is also 7. 7 times 7 is 49. Now, when we talk about the units, anytime we're dealing with perimeter, the units is going to be in meters. Anytime we're talking about area, my units are going to be in meters squared.